I'm here knee to knee with Hannah Bell in one of her offices.
Yes.
The PEI Business Women's Association.
That's right.
And you're the executive director?
That's correct.
Great.
Yeah.
So you had recently, I'll call it a symposium. It was a real gathering of, how many women were involved in that? Hannah?
125.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great day. Yeah.
And people who walked in there would say, I didn't realize there were so many young business women.
Yeah.
Or period, that there'd be such a gathering. So tell us about that.
Well, the Symposium is our signature event that we do at the Business Women's Association. We relaunched it 3 years ago, and it was really about an idea of giving a unique event for women in PEI who are not just entrepreneurs but small business owners and professional women, a chance to be able to get together with other women who are like them and make those connections, but also have that day where they can really invest in learning and growing their own. We don't tend to give ourselves the time to do that kind of work, so that was the real kind of thinking behind it.
You know, and a big piece of what you could feel just by walking into that room is a kind of a collective telling our story.
Yeah.
Which is so powerful, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a big part of how you mobilize that. But
it's a key thing of everything that we do at the association, because one of the things we often hear is, why do we even need a business association for women? And the short answer is because things aren't exactly the same as they are for everyone in business. What we look at is all entrepreneurs have the same challenges, and there's an additional set of challenges that sometimes women face. Not all women, but some women. And so one of the things that we do around that is not just help women meet and connect with other business owners, but also tell the stories about what women are doing so that we can get out to a broader audience. So we've been doing that Telling Our Stories campaign, in lots of different ways. You have to layer it out, but the Symposium is part of that.
And you did that fantastic interview with Catherine Callback that
Wasn't that
day.
fun?
And do you have any feedback that was empowering for the other women in the room?
I think it was one of those really kind of key things. There's people who said they'd heard Catherine speak before, but they heard her say things that day that they'd never heard from her. But to have that kind of pivotal conversation where it's really kind of reinforcing that thing about authenticity and about being true to yourself, and about that kind of the values that we really know matter, but to hear somebody speak about them in terms of how they've influenced her whole life. We monitor our social media. It's a huge piece of what we do is this working? And that was certainly one of the most talked about things from the day was Catherine and Catherine's story.
Yeah, well, one of the pieces that I loved, and of course you brought it out, was when she told about turning down that job in St. John.
Wasn't that great?
And, Catherine, people have developed all kinds of language around, feminism and, equity and change and so on. But Catherine said, it wasn't fair.
Yeah. Well, and that's a big piece of it, right? Like, we don't want to kind of create stories that don't work for everybody. So you've got to really think about sort of the language that you use and the words that you use that are the same kind of things that people can tell other people. And so that's what we're seeing over and over, is that piece of that story is so relatable, because it just makes so much sense, right? It's a fantastic place to go from. Yeah.
So you come to this work as an entrepreneur yourself. Tell us about Hannah the entrepreneur.
Sure. And the joke is that in between there I had a career in government, so I did have a little bit of a break. But I've always been an entrepreneur, and I think it's really important, if you're going to be in a role where you're supporting and advising other people, it's probably a good idea that you know what you're talking about. And I think that really helps, that everyone that works in our association or with our association are all entrepreneurs. Every staff person, every volunteer, all the board members. We need to know that we're coming from a place of truth as well. But I've been an entrepreneur without knowing that's what it was my whole life. I was kind of joking, but not joking, about chickens earlier. I actually did start with chickens when I was a kid, and bunnies. I had rabbits. I've had craft businesses. I've had an import-export business. I've worked as running social enterprises, which is probably where my heart always comes back to, sort of doing work that not only can generate revenue and profit, but does good in the community. And right now I have more than one business that I'm either a direct owner of or a partner in, as well as my day job here at the association.
And you said you've always been that way. Is there a moment when you can say that revealed itself?
I think some of it is circumstance. My family emigrated here from England, and I actually grew up in London. So I came from living inner city London to moving to a farm in New Argyll when I was 9. And my family did what many families do, which is when they come as they go, we did the hobby farm approach. So it was pretty much kind of full in, head start, you know, you only get stuff done if you do it yourself. And it was just part of how I grew up, was that if we wanted to have money to spend on things, then you needed to find a way to earn that money. And so that work ethic of making your own way and working hard and making your own things happen was something that was just part of how I grew up. At the same time, my stepfather is an engineer and was working with NRC, and he was also an inventor, so we had a lab in our basement. He invented the process for extracting carrageenan from Irish moss. So I was a lab assistant when I was 12. And I think that also that exposure of knowing as a woman that there were no barriers in what I could achieve. That's never been an issue for me of you can't do that because you're a girl. I've done all the things that you're not supposed to do because you're a girl.
That's fantastic. So let me take it back through
Sure.
to the Business Women's Association, or for that matter, to the population of women in business on the island today. Do you see that growing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think partly it's growing because we're aware it's there. It was always there, but as we see now, there's more and more recognition that role of women that women play in some of the businesses that women have may not fit in traditional models of what we see as sort of 9-to-5 day jobs, but are just as important, as well as the 9-to-5 day jobs. So we also see a kind of a more recognition of the work and the value that women do in the service-based industries, which is often where some of those businesses start. The arts and crafts as part of our culture, our cultural story, is a huge piece of that, and that's often women who are leading those kind of roles. So we do a lot of work about sort of validating and recognizing that women who work in the cultural industry, for example, are entrepreneurs. We had the privilege of being able to feature Megan Blanchard as one of our speakers at the Symposium. And to hear her introduced as an entrepreneur is really important,
Yes.
because it's about changing that language that recognizes that what she does is just as important and as valuable as somebody who's invented a software app or is working in bio.
And it's essentially entrepreneurial because you're independent.
Yeah.
You're taking whatever the risks are.
Yeah.
And you go ahead or not according to how successful or how to the standard to which you compete with everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah. The structures are all the same regardless.
Exactly. The piece that comes out of what you've just said that is really kind of captures it is, in the words of Zita Cobb, who's created this great thing, as you know, on Fogo Island. She said it's about seeing what's in plain sight.
Yeah, and I think it's a big piece of our island story. We have men and women who are working in those sectors that we're very familiar with. So we've got amazing women doing amazing things in the IT sector and in bioscience. We heard from some of them at our symposium as well, like Tara Costello and Susan Rowe. But we also need to look at that whole picture of the story of PEI. And often women are playing roles in there that we need to celebrate more. We need to bring them forward. And so a large part of the work we do at the Symposium and on a broader scale at the association is about that, is celebrating and recognizing and keep stepping up and telling those stories.
Well, I'm glad we got a chance to have this talk today and how that's going to contribute to further telling of our story. So thanks for that, and keep up the good work, Anna.
Thank you very much, Wade.
Great.
Cheers.